Coming at you with a solo episode on suffering. The title of this episode, I already have the vision for it. As I was doing my Melissa Wood Health Pilates this morning for 20 minutes, I just saw it in my mind's eye. Suffering is optional. Breaking news for women everywhere, especially mothers. Tell everyone suffering is optional. And the reason I felt inspired to talk about this was yesterday's mastermind call in the Femme Paradigm Mastermind, which, by the way, is quarterly enrollment. So enrollment will be opening up again in another 2 months. But like the conversations we're having on these mastermind calls are so deep and profound and multi-layered is how I would describe them, right? And so one of my clients was asking like, well, can you explain, what's the process of thought? What's the process of thinking for new paradigm versus old paradigm? And I know paradigm is almost becoming a buzzword now, right? People are throwing around the word paradigm. And when I felt the call to name my group coaching membership community and mastermind the Femme Paradigm, it felt really profound to me because we are at a turning point as women. We are redefining what womanhood looks like for us. And how do I know this? Because this is my experience, right? I am embodying this for myself, and really loving leading women through this process. And I definitely feel I need to do more to explain to you what the fuck I'm talking about and what that means. And so on today's episode, I have these notes. I'm like all fired up. We're going to riff about what is old paradigm versus new paradigm, right? And the reason this came up on the mastermind call yesterday was because this client was talking a lot about motherhood, a lot about the trenches, about the human experience of being a mother and all of the crazy feelings that come along with it. I think in the podcast episode that published as I'm recording this with Juliana James, she references motherhood as like the renegade life of being a mother. And I was like, yeah, it's like, sounds like it's not that exciting, but holy shit, it's a roller coaster, right? And if you're there, and 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 basically this client was explaining all of these scenarios that have been continue to be very challenging as a mother, that we all experience, and wanting to find the ease, wanting to find the new paradigm, how to go through this universal experience of being a mother as the new paradigm. And I want to also explain that what I'm about to talk about today does not just apply to mothers. It is across the board for women. So as we were having this conversation, I realized there was a theme running through the thread connecting every topic we were talking about in motherhood, and that was suffering. And this idea that self-sacrifice equals self-worth, that you have to suffer when you're a mother. You have to, if you are suffering, that proves that you are a good mother. And so many women have taken on this belief unconsciously, right? This is happening at the unconscious level. And what we're going to talk about, I'm going to explain, is like, this is our lineage. This is passed down from us from ancestors because old paradigm, the history of being a woman is really fucking hard, right? That if you look back at women's history, it is ripe with struggle, lack of access. I mean, if you're a woman of color, this is still holding true. Lack of access, lack of equality, martyrdom, lack of self-expression, right? And so that created this belief for women of the world for centuries that self-sacrifice equals self-worth. I have no place in this family unit unless my place is self-sacrificing. I don't know who I am. I don't have value. I don't have power. So my role is self-sacrificing. And that was real. I mean, that's a real part of history. Like, women have been trailblazing forever to get us to this exact moment in time where suddenly women have a buffet of choice. Women have a buffet of resources. Women have a buffet of access and internet and power. That is a thing that is new. We think it's like, oh, oh, independent women, like we've always been this way. Like, no, this is new. This is very recent. Okay. And so even the generation, like my mother's generation, I know that they hear what I talk about and they're like, whoa, that is a lot. That is aggressive. What does her husband think? Because that was their reality. And I want to acknowledge that and respect that, because this is not about saying, oh, old paradigm, our mothers, their mothers, generations of mothers that came before me were doing it wrong. They were flawed. They didn't live in their power. And no, they did not have power. And those who did, many of them like were killed. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we're not even going to go into history. I think Stephanie Berg talks about it a little bit in that podcast episode, if you haven't listened to it. But women have historically been not pivoted. What is it? pitted against each other. And so acknowledging that we are at a new turning point. And that's why I feel so excited about the language. This is the new paradigm, the femme paradigm, the new way of doing womanhood that is now available to us because we have this buffet of options. And I'm going to give you an example of what is the buffet I'm talking about, right? Let's start with antidepressants. Let's start with medicine. Let's start with science. Okay. That wasn't a thing. So women used to die in childbirth all the time. Also, side note, women of color are still dying in childbirth at way higher numbers than white women. Why? Because that's not fixed yet. But I'm talking right now to women of privilege, which is not talking down. This is just like, no, like check your privilege. Just know, like you now probably were not going to die in childbirth. You now have science and meds available to you, right? So this is just one way things have changed. Women are not just like strapped to tables delivering babies and dying, because that, not to be a real Debbie Downer, but that used to happen, right? And so new paradigm, we've got therapy, we've got yoga. Yoga is cool. We've got nannies. We've got women, like van life is cool. We've got the suburbs, which used to be a thing that kept women in the house. But now for me, in this podcast with Juliana James, we talk about this, like she has chosen like city life and I just moved into suburban living. And that was a choice. That was an empowered choice. And I got a choice. I love it. Right. I'm loving living in the suburbs, even though it's 10 minutes from downtown. I just do want to say, um, but you have the choice. Where do you want to live? Do you want to own a house? Do you want to buy a house? Can you get credit? Can you take it? Right. It doesn't married if you're married. It doesn't matter if you're married and you want to buy a house, or you're single. It doesn't matter if you are two women in a partnership or man and woman, like all of this choice. We feel like we haven't come far at all. We feel like we're so behind, but yet we are on the wave. Like we are riding this wave into the new paradigm, and that is a privilege, and that is also really real. And so this choice offers us a new way of doing womanhood, a new paradigm, which is you get to choose what it looks like. You get to choose whether self-sacrifice equals self-worth, or worthiness is inherent. Worthiness is implied, understood, a given. We can move on from that old struggle of just trying to prove that we deserve a seat at the table, to just recognizing, oh, we're at the table. It's our table now. This is my table. Welcome. Right? This is my podcast. I created this, right? That's a privilege. That's a huge advancement for women everywhere. That's new paradigm. So now I'm at this table. Now I own this table. What do I want to do with this? Do I want to prove that I'm a good woman in business by suffering? Do I want to prove that I'm a good mother by suffering and trying to record a podcast while my kid is in the other room, knocking on the door because I didn't get the nanny, even though I could have the nanny? Right. This is a whole conversation. And that's just one example. But I think what I'm trying to say is we are being given the opportunity to embody the next paradigm of womanhood where suffering is optional. And so when I was talking to this woman yesterday, this client, what it was bringing up for me was medication, antidepressants. And I think I want to like go on a tangent about this too, because I think it is my responsibility as a white woman of privilege who is in the personal development space, who takes that role of leadership very seriously. Like, I don't just show up to coach and have no training, no mentors, no certifications to back it up, right? I am constantly investing. I've invested over $20,000 in myself in the last 7 months. And I noticed that when I had my third baby, um, and a pandemic hit, that was a good time. That was like an understandable time to cry uncle, to say, "Oh wow, I'm suffering. This shit is really hard. I think I'm depressed. I think something's not right within me. I'm not my best self and I would like some antidepressants." That was understandable. That was like a time where it's like, "Oh my god, don't suffer. Take the meds." And then I weaned off the meds because I felt great. And that felt like I just knew intuitively, like, okay, I'm good now. And then life happened again. And what's the key here is we are modern women living with ancient beliefs about what it means to be a good woman. So old paradigm woman wasn't juggling the shit we're juggling now. Let's just lay that on the table too, right? So now I'm a modern woman. I'm not on my meds. I'm running my business. I have 3 children. We move. And suddenly the stressors of moving, my self-help tools don't feel enough. I am exercising, I am listening to my hypnotherapy, but I recognize like this environmental trigger of being kicked out of my house every day for 6 weeks with my 3 children and leaving it spotless so that I could show it to people coming to look at it is creating a lot of suffering. And then I had this click very quickly because I've been doing this work for over 10 years. And I just thought, oh, wait, suffering is optional. Wait a minute. There is an easy button here, which is I could go back on those meds because the stress of this is too much. And this is the point where a lot of women say, like, oh, well, it's not like as understandable. Like, it's not the pandemic, it's just moving. But guess what? Nobody gets a badge of honor for suffering. Nobody gets a badge of honor for not going on meds when life feels a little bit harder. And so, what I want to tell women everywhere is your suffering is optional. I went back on my antidepressants and I was like, oh, I feel amazing. I feel like it just like took down the stories in my head, the stress, the like I can't the anxiety just enough so that then I was like, running my business like a boss, coaching my clients. Like I felt like I could show up for my clients with such power because I was focused on them. Right. Because the other things in my life weren't keeping me small, weren't keeping me contracted, weren't keeping me this smaller version of myself. And an old version, old paradigm Gervase would have said, oh, well, I can't like go on antidepressants right now. Like what, I mean, what does that say about me? And the new paradigm is like, what are you trying to prove? Like you have a buffet of choice as a modern woman leading a new paradigm for women, which is what tool? What do you want from this buffet to make your life as expansive and abundant and powerful as possible so you can do your work? And guess what your work is? To show up, to be like the most abundant, loving version of yourself possible. All of us have callings in different ways. Some of us, if you're a stay at home mom and your work is to be like, for some reason, the word stewarding is coming to mind. It feels really out of context, but stewarding tiny humans into adulthood. That is an important life calling. Are you not doing it to your fullest potential because you're trying to prove that you don't need meds because you don't have a good reason? Old paradigm, new paradigm. You press the easy button as often as possible because that is a privilege that you even have this table that's got a buffet of choice on it, right? Because the more that you choose your beliefs, the more that you choose your reality, the more that you acknowledge your privilege and recognize, okay, my self worth is inherent. My self worth is my responsibility, and it gets to be easy now. I have the responsibility as a modern woman, especially a modern mother in this new paradigm, to be a really good receiver and receive the shit out of all of the resources and tools and abundance that comes to me in all ways, not just money, not just meds. I'm talking people, like every way that abundance comes to me so that I can ripple that out, because we are all here to be humans that ripple out abundance to those around us, to remind each other of that like magic inside of us. And it doesn't have to be, it doesn't look one way. It's not like, okay, I just happen to be a coach and that sounds great because like, oh, my purpose is to help you tap into your power and ripple that out. And you don't have to be a coach to be on the cutting edge here of the new paradigm. You don't have to be a coach to decide suffering is optional. I get to choose whatever the fuck experience I want as a modern woman. That's a privilege. That's that's just like my birthright. I am worthy. And now I get to spread this worthiness to my children, to every person I meet. You have no idea the ripple effect that you have, whether you are a coach, a stay-at-home mom, a CEO, like someone, on the ground fighting for change, or just someone fighting the good fight, like being a normal mainstream woman, whatever that looks like to you. You fucking matter. You feeling good matters. Your suffering is optional and it didn't used to be. That doesn't mean that life won't happen to you. That doesn't mean that like, things are still out of your control and things will happen that are hard or challenging or not what you had desired. And you get to choose how you respond to those things. I could have made this move like totally derail me. In the past I have. I've turned into like a dark version of myself, like a small, sad version of myself. And that version of myself, she is powerful too. She needs love and attention too. But I was tending to her by like staying small, staying hurt, staying small, and staying continuing my suffering versus wait, you want support. You need support. Okay, great. What's going to make it easier? Oh, these meds? Great. Take the meds. And I'm using meds as an example here, but I mean, it can look like anything. I saw somebody's post on Instagram yesterday, a mama that I follow, and she said, this pandemic has been really hard. It doesn't feel good for me to need to ask for help. It doesn't feel good for me to need to ask for support. And I read it and it like shook me. And I commented, even though I don't know her that well. And I said, sending you so much love. Yeah, this pandemic has been so challenging for so many people, and it's different for everyone. We're all experiencing it differently, and you don't need to ask for help. You get to ask for help. That's part of your privilege. That's part of like, you're a modern woman surrounded by resources, surrounded. Martyrdom is old paradigm. Self-sacrifice does not equal self-worth. Acknowledging your inherent abundance and worthiness and reframing that and being like, oh, I don't have to ask for help. I get to ask for help. Oh, so do I want coaching? Do I want therapy? Do I want meds? Do I want a nanny? Like, what would it look like? What would it look like to feel abundant right now? And where have I decided I just don't get to have that because self-sacrifice equals self-worth? And of course, this is a really tricky subconscious thing that happens. That's why hypnotherapy, like these custom tracks that I make for my VIP hypnotherapy clients, like they are super powerful because we are reframing your subconscious beliefs so that your subconscious mind can start to believe, oh, it's safe. It's safe for me to adopt this belief that it gets to be easy. It's okay for me to receive this abundance of a nanny. It's okay for me to ask my sister for help. Like, you get to do that. That's awesome, right? It's okay for me to ask for help on the internet. Like, that doesn't make you weak. That makes you fucking smart. That makes you a modern woman leading a new paradigm. So, new paradigm, embody it, embrace it, acknowledge it. And those of you on the path who don't have as much privilege as some of us, like myself, sitting here on this mountaintop with so much privilege as I talk about this, it's our responsibility to bring these women up with us, these women who don't have as many resources, these women who are affected by systemic racism. Like, we bring them up, and the more abundance we receive while being super mindful, intentional, acknowledging our privilege, the more we can ripple that out to women who are having less privilege, so that they can start embodying this and living this story and not be in constant survival mode. Again, another episode altogether. But it doesn't have to be one way or another. You get to receive all of that abundance. You get to, embody next paradigm. You get to embody worthiness and abundance and do the work. Do the work on your thoughts, do the work on how you're showing up in the world, do the work on understanding your privilege, so that you can ripple that out, so that you can bring the rest of the women who are not, they are not on this mountaintop with us yet. they're they're getting there. I mean, it's closer. Of course, it's closer than it was like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago, but like, there's still work to be done. But you don't serve them by staying small. You don't serve the people around you who haven't turned on their lights yet by not turning on your light, because you just want to prove, like, look, I belong with you. My light's off too. Yay, we're all struggling. We're all suffering together. Suffering is optional. We need more women to be the light. We need more women to unapologetically embrace and embody their worthiness, and the reality that it gets to be easy in the new paradigm if you work on your thoughts, and showing the women who aren't there yet, this is possible. This is possible for all of us. And it's not just like a one and done, fix it and forget it, right? This is a multi-layered approach. Like, especially the way that I think of it. This is not spiritual bypassing. This is like, okay, what's the work on me? What's the work on my privilege? What's the work on my thoughts? How can I impact? How can I ripple this out? It's so multi-layered. And we get into that in the Femme Paradigm Mastermind. So just know that that is opening up in a couple months, and we go really deep into this work of embodying the new paradigm. Feels so good when I go rogue like this and just get to go on a tangent. So I really hope that that gives any of you permission to hit the easy button, release your death grip on control of suffering, to release your to loosen up your belief that suffering equals self-worth. We get to show women everywhere a different way. So let's do it together. Let's do this work. It's honestly pretty fucking fun. I think you're going to like it here on my mountaintop. There's wine and coffee and lots of other women. And we all just help each other. And also, with so much humility, keep learning, learning, learning. All these human lessons, all these earth lessons, fucking up, making mistakes, trying again. That's what it's all about. So, sending you so much love. Mwah.